Hello everyone, we will talk about hypothesis testing this week. First, let's talk about what is a hypothesis. Before we talk about the difference between a hypothesis and a research question a couple weeks ago, I'm not sure if you remember, so let's refresh your memory. A hypothesis is a specific testable statement of a relationship between two variables based on theory or prior research. In order to test our hypothesis, we need to use inferential statistics. We are moving away from descriptive statistics now. And we look at two or more variables at the same time and allow us to make statistical inferences about the relationship between those variables. Let me give you more examples. The first type of hypothesis is null hypothesis. This is what we always assume to be true until we until we find evidence suggests otherwise. It just means we start with there is no relationship exists, and we try to find evidence to the contrary. We assume playing violent video games does not make you more aggressive. That's the basic assumption. Now you find evidence to support the contrary. But what we are really interested in is alternative hypothesis. That's what science is all about. We want to propose the reality that we believe to be true. There are two types of hypothesis. One is directional hypothesis. It's one way, one-tailed. We propose that violent gameplay will cause more aggression than non-violent gameplay. So you see the relationship here. And non-directional just means there will be a difference between violent and non-violent gameplay. It means we don't assume one side will be more aggression. We just say there will be a difference. One side may be more aggressive afterwards, or the other side may be less aggressive, but we don't know which one is on which side. It may not be proper here because we kind of assume, of course, violent gameplay should end up with more aggression. But I'm just giving you an example about non-directional hypothesis here. More common non-directional hypothesis would be something like there will be a difference between men and women in terms of their alcohol consumption. You don't assume who consumes more alcohol, or you'll say there will be differences between freshman and senior in terms of assignments they need to finish. You don't assume who have more assignments than the other. So just you assume there will be differences, but you don't really know who has more. Hypothesis testing tells us if we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. In other words, we find support for our alternative hypothesis, which is what we're really interested in, but we reworded it like if we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. It's really formality thing, I would say, for scientists, but there is a whole philosophy about why we word our statement this way, and we won't go into that in this lecture. Just remember that's what we say. We either reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. If we reject the null hypothesis, that means our alternative hypothesis makes sense. If we fail to reject the null hypothesis, that means we didn't find evidence supporting alternative hypothesis. Now, we need to think about the role of chance. You may find something just by chance, find some difference just by chance. You recruit some men and women to the lab, and you find out that women consume more alcohol in the last week. That may just be something you find out by chance. That's not a reality all the time, or it's not a pattern that exists in people's life. So our largest concern with quantitative data analysis is that our results are based on chance. We want our results occurring by chance to be small so we can feel confident about our findings. So let's talk a little bit about probability and hypothesis testing. Whether or not we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis depends on the probability that we're obtaining our results by chance. 5% chance of being wrong will be represented by p-value smaller than 0.05. P just means probability here. That's how we write it. If we write p smaller than 0.05, we're really saying is we have less than 5% of chance of being wrong. That's actually the comfort zone for most scientists. That's the standard that we all agree on. We want to make sure that the difference we find or the effect we find can only occur by chance less than 0.05% of the time. If we try 100%, let's say we try something 100 times, this kind of result will only show up by chance less than 5 times. That's what it means. A stats program will give you this percentage or a p-value. When we have a p-value that's less than 0.05, you can reject the null hypothesis, which means your alternative hypothesis, the one you propose, the one you're interested in, the one you devoted all your time and resource in, actually makes sense. So p smaller than 0.05 is like the greatest news for social scientists and scientists in general, I would say, if you do experimental survey studies and if you use inferential statistics. Right now, it may not make a lot of sense. Just remember, 5% chance of being wrong is our comfort zone. And we want the chance of being wrong smaller than 0.05. There is a way to test whether the p-value is really less than 0.05 with all stats program. This is all you need to know right now. You don't have to know the math behind it or the philosophy of science behind it. That's all you need to remember. P-value or significance level is what we call it. And the most common significance level used for social science, 0.05, which is 5%. Now, let's go back to the normal curve. This is really the most important figure in social science or in inferential statistics in general. We talked about this a little bit last week. So when you have a large sample size, or when you're referring to the whole population, which should have a large size, we believe that the distribution of the population usually follow a normal curve, which means most people will be in the middle, we have small group of people on the extreme, and most people will be surrounded. Most people should surround the mean, the average. And by some statistical theory, mathematical theory, we believe that about 95% of the population should fall within 2 standard deviation from the mean. Remember, standard deviation is just distance from the mean. Remember the example we had, the average US age was 37 years old. And if you're 20 years old, you're 17 years old away from the average. But we don't use absolute difference. We use the squared error and calculate the total squared of error and calculate variance and calculate standard deviation. All that math you can ignore. Just remember, standard deviation represents distance, and 95% of the time you should get a value that's 2 standard deviation around the mean, either below or above. And the chances that you're getting something is in the red area should be about 5% of the time or less. You see, on one side, let's say 2 standard deviation below the mean, that's only 2.5% of the time. And if you go 2 standard deviation above the mean, that's also 2.5% of the time. So together, that's about 5% of the time. Let me give you a real life example. If you say normal people recover from a fever within 3 hours on average, so let's say the mean is 3 hours, and you find a drug that all the people took your drug on average recover from the fever in 20 minutes. And you compare to the population, compare to the bear curve, you realize 20 minutes is more than 2 standard deviation below the average, which means it falls somewhere here. Then you can say your drug is effective. And if your drug is not effective, this result only happened by chance, that chance is below 5%. So you are confident to say 95% of the time you can be confident to say your drug is probably effective. Does it make sense? We will have more examples later. Just stay with me. Now, all we are trying to do is increasing the confidence level. In other words, we're trying to decrease the probability that we did something wrong. We only find the results seem meaningful by chance. That's what we call a false positive. That's what we call type 1 error as well. It's basically the same thing. Wrongly reject the null hypothesis when it's actually true. So we find a difference but it's not in there in reality. Remember the example I talked a few minutes ago? You had 30 men and 30 women in your lab. You'll find out those 30 women on average consumed more alcohol than the 30 men. But actually you made some mistake in recruitment or some other mistake in measurement. In reality, men on average consume more alcohol than women. But if you believed in your research result, you made a conclusion that yes, women consume more alcohol than men on average, then you made a mistake. Then you made a mistake that reflects type 1 error. You got a false positive. And this is determined by statistical significance level as well. Probability, which is the p-value smaller than 0.05, means there is a fewer than 5 times in 100 chance of a type 1 error occur. So finding a result that doesn't exist. We want to make sure that with stats program, it shows us only less than 5% of the time, 5 out of 100 times, we may make a false positive conclusion. In type 2 error will be the opposite. So if you think about it like a drug test or blood test or pregnancy test, you get a false positive. That means you got a false negative, means you got a negative sign, but it's actually positive in reality. So it's the opposite type of error. If you look at this figure, it may make more sense to you. If in reality the null is false, means there is a relationship, and you reject the null, you propose there is a relationship, you made a good decision. In reality, when null is true, there is no relationship, and you fail to reject the null, you said there is no relationship, then you made a good decision. The other two will be false positive and false negative. That's the 2 types of errors you need to learn. I know it's a little bit hard to remember. You need to go over it a couple times. It may help you to think about the medical tests. Usually blood tests or pregnancy tests are very common because people see these types of tests go wrong all the time on TV. So if you need, write down notes here, notes there to help you remember what is type 1, what is type 2. By all means, write down the example that makes sense to you so you can remember what is type 1 and what is type 2. With science, just remember we are comfortable with the probability of making type 1 error smaller than 0.05, which is 5%. And how do we get a p-value? That's the most important thing we're going to learn in the next few weeks. We do statistics and we do inferential statistics specifically. There are different types of stats we can run. I list them here based on the types of variables you are dealing with. When you're dealing with quantitative dependent variable, quantitative independent variable, you can do correlation, ANOVA, crosstabs. This one we don't do, you don't need to worry about now, and I will explain more what does quantitative variable mean and what does categorical variable mean. You actually already learned about it, it's just a different name. And don't worry about too much now, just know we will cover a few tests that will give us the p-value. We want to know the probability of making a mistake. Remember, we want it to be smaller than 0.05 because p-value represents we get a false positive. We want that to be as small as possible, but the comfort level would be smaller than 0.05. I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but repetition is the best way to remember a message. Just remember we want p to be small, and that's really the most important thing you need to learn from this lecture. Okay, I will see you next week.